Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Helen Cole, and I'm the founder of the Gene Collective. The Gene Collective is a local Sarnia Lambton initiative developed by a group of women who bring their own unique skills and experience to the collective. Our hope is to inspire and to educate women so that they will become more involved in politics. That could be running for public office, that could be working on a campaign. There's just a myriad of ways that women can become involved in politics. Of course, we like to see them run for public office, and for that reason, we're interviewing Muriel Wright today. And Muriel, I've seen you at a variety of meetings and community events over the years, but I didn't know that until recently you had been a counselor for 24 years in both Plympton Township and the town of Plympton, Wyoming. You're now in your second year, I think, as deputy mayor of the town of Plympton, Wyoming. So, wow, when I got your bio, and by the way, I looked you up on the internet and I couldn't find a whole lot. So it was one of the rare times when I had to ask for a bio. When I read it, I was amazed at the list of your contributions to the community. They really are so numerous that I don't have time to list them all, except to say that your portfolio lists 27 committees and volunteer experiences. It also sounds as if you've had some interesting times during your years on council, and we'd like to know more about that. So welcome, Muriel. We're really glad you're here today.
Well, thank you, Helen. Thank you for inviting me. I keep things kind of private to myself. So yeah, when I do step out in the public, I do let myself known for my passionate projects, put it that way.
So Muriel, what do you wish you had known before starting a career in municipal politics?
Well, I lived around politics my whole life in my family. So it was always a topic at the dinner table. And what really got me into politics here was the Toronto garbage issue back in '88, when they decided to propose our farmland for the Toronto garbage. And that's what got me into the politics. I attended every council meeting of township and county for 5 years. So some would say I got my degree in garbage.
Wow. You know, we suggest to people, if they're interested in running for council, that they take the time to attend meetings, and you have illustrated that so well, how important that is. And I'm sure you learned a lot through that process, through the 5 years of attending meetings. So if you could give just one piece of advice to anyone that may be considering municipal politics, what would it be?
Well, the number one advice I always give is God gave us 2 eyes and 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And you never, and the other one is you never get in a pissing match with a skunk.
Muriel, I love the fact that you just say it like it is.
That is me.
So that maybe would lead me into my next question. What has been the greatest challenge for you during your time in office?
Well, maneuvering around people with their own agendas is probably the biggest problem there is in public office.
And how do you cope with that?
Well, you have to have broad shoulders, and you have to have a lot of patience too. So you have to remember the wheels of governance never turns fast. So you have to step back and think it over and think before you speak.
Excellent advice. Some that there are times in my life when I should have remembered that myself. So, what resources do you use to help you through the most challenging situations?
Well, basically the same thing, a lot of patience, and you listen to the people. And it doesn't always matter what your opinion is, it's what the people think. And you go with what the majority think. And it may be not always right, but you have to find that middle ground and balance.
Pat Davidson, when I interviewed her, said something very similar about ensuring that you listen. And that goes along with what you said earlier. So one of the things I think all of us need to remember, especially those who may be considering a run in politics, is we always need to listen and hear the other side. And I'm sure that you take opinions from, as you just said, from a variety of different sources to help you make your decision. So, Muriel, are there any skills or knowledge that interested candidates should be learning and developing before running in an election?
Well, the number one thing is that you should read the Municipal Act, know what it says, and understand it to a point. And as I said before, attending meetings and participating, volunteering, getting on some of these governance committees, because there's a lot of volunteer committees. I did that with the garbage issue. I volunteered. Well, first of all, my municipality appointed me to be their representative at the county of Plympton. This was when they were doing their master plan for the waste management. And I became chairperson of that committee. And so therefore, that's what got me on the inside of the county works of understanding the procedures and the protocols that take place in governments. And so attending all those meetings and reading all the reports and learning all those things. And I also went back to school at Lambton College and took environmental law, so I could understand all these legal documents that I kept throwing at me. So yeah, so I got my certificate in environmental law and writing compliances. And so it took me through that process because the process of the Environmental Protection Act is very intensive. And so then I was also appointed to the Ontario Environmental Policy Board with that. And so I learned a lot, even in Toronto. It was very interesting learning all the different specters of the government in Toronto, and of all parties. It wasn't just one party, it was all of them that you dealt with. And you waded through all the policies and again, making recommendation for the to the final board for the Environmental Protection Act.
That's impressive. How long did it take you to get your certificate?
It was over a 2-year, like I did it at night, and while I was still working at the same time, because at that time I was working for a company in waste management, and I was their environmental waste reduction specialist. And so I went into a lot of manufacturing plants in the Chemical Valley, right down to Windsor, Chatham, and in fact, the trucking plant in Chatham won the environmental award that year for their reduction in waste, because I did their waste audit and I gave them 88% diversion rate on their plant, and giving them ideas of how to deal with minimizing waste.
You were certainly the right person to be involved in the environmental aspects. Wow, I didn't know that about you either. So Muriel, I almost hesitate to ask this question because among some people, there's a thought that you can't run for council if you have a full-time job, because being on council is a full-time job. Tell me about your experience. You started 24 years ago. Did you have children at home at the time? You were working full-time? What was the time commitment then? Has it changed? What would be a typical amount of time you would spend during a week on your council activities? So I asked a lot of questions in that short little piece there. So you can, and we can always come back.
Oh, that's fine, Helen. Yes, my family were in their senior years of high school and starting university, so I had a little bit more time on my hands. They were finished, not quite finished, but I still spent a fair bit of time. They were figure skaters, so I spent 20 hours a week in the arena, but it gave me time to also read agendas and such too. So yes, about 20 hours a week is spent usually on regular council business, I would say, phone calls, reading agendas, going to see different aspects that in the what's in the agenda. And yeah, and it's called time management, and which I learned very early in my younger years after having a family, that time management is very important, or else you can stress yourself out.
So Muriel, how often does your council meet in a month?
We meet twice a month for regular council meetings and once a month for planning meetings as a council of a whole. And then we have our committee meetings on top of that. Usually we have anywhere from 2 to 3 committee meetings that we have to attend either monthly or bi-monthly. And so that, and each one of those meetings, of course, has an agenda with it. So so that's what takes up the majority of the time. Usually the second week of the month and the last week of the month is filled with meetings. We try to space them out so that everybody has a little bit of time off, so you're not constantly at meetings.
That's how I remember it when I sat on the City of St. Thomas Council, that there were some weeks that you had more going on than you do in others. And I, like you, worked full time in those days. So you've touched on this a bit, but do you think it's possible to work a full-time job while you serve in office?
Yes, again, like I said, time management is the most important aspect of it all. And if you can break it down and prioritize what is the most important, and so on. So yes, there was lots of evenings I didn't get home for to make supper until maybe 8, 9 o'clock. But yeah, it's doable, and in those things, and if it's a council meeting, we usually have a break, and we're fortunate that we're next door to our a little deli counter, so we can pick up a snack or whatever to tie us over. But yeah, most of the meetings are in the evening. So.
And you described something that actually is ideal, especially now that you don't really, there aren't paper agendas and minutes and documents anymore. Everyone receives that online. So with your iPad or your laptop, for younger ones, they can take that when life returns to normal, they can take that to the hockey arena or wherever, so that it's portable and they can take their material with them and read it when appropriate. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yes, lots of times. If I say, if I had go to the garage to get the car oil changed. I quite often take my agenda with me, so you have an hour to sit there, and that's your downtime.
Sure.
And you take advantage of it. And it's again, it's all called time management.
Right. And our next question, I think we really answered it. It was, is it possible to combine politics, a full-time job, and children? I think we kind of answered that. One of the questions, and these questions I should have said come from a variety of different women. One of the questions that gets asked again and again is, should there be a provision for childcare expenses to help women to cope with both children and a political career?
Yes, I do believe that now people, they have different commitments with family, and I think that would be appropriate to give some type of allowance, but it goes again very similar to our office expenses, and that it could be incorporated in that. So when I'm just in the midst of doing my income tax, and yes, because we don't get office space in our office, or like the municipal office, therefore we have to use our home space. And we have to use our own cell phones and our home phones and everything. So there is an allowance given to you in office for doing that public service job. And now, mind you, it doesn't amount to a whole lot, but then you're not paid a whole lot when you're, at least in our municipalities here, we're small. So we don't pay, it's not a high paying job, put it that way. I call it my volunteerism.
And really, I don't think that's a reason people go into local government. I think it's because they want to contribute to their community. And this is one of the ways they can do it, by participating in the decisions that are made locally. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Oh, yes, definitely. So, yeah, like I said, I kind of call it my volunteer job, because I think it kind of costs me more than what I take in.
I remember for years I worked for 8 years as a village clerk. And so I organized paying our counselors, and then I moved and went to St. Thomas and decided to run for council there. And even though I knew there was a payment, I was still so shocked when I got that first pay. It's like, oh my God, I get paid to do this stuff in my community. It was just so cool. So Muriel, did childcare, your children were in secondary school, so childcare responsibilities probably didn't factor into your decision to enter politics. However, did it stop you from entering earlier because you had young children? And should it have?
No, like I said, I grew up in a home and family that always talked about politics, but it wasn't my aspiration to become a counselor or that. But I did remember my grandfather being a counselor down at what's known as St. Clair Township now. But and I remember doing Sunday visits, and he would have neighbors coming and asking him to bend his ear for their drainage problem or whatever was happening. But it never occurred to me that I would ever enter that field. But anyway, I did. And when I did enter it, I didn't enter it willingly. It was because that was an election year in '96. And the people kept saying, why aren't you running for council? And this was after I had defeated the Toronto garbage issue. And I said, and at the last day I did, I put in my papers, and I think at that time I had to have 20 people sign my papers. And And I said, well, I will submit them, but I will not campaign. If I get in, I get in. If I don't, I don't. And I left it at that. And I've been there. So that's how it really started.
Excellent. So as a woman, do you think you contribute a different perspective than your male counterparts? Do you look at life differently?
Well, I think what my experiences over the years is I look at women are traditionally more organized and they see the bigger picture. And so that I think we outshine the men because we see we look beyond this year. And I try to look in like 5 years and forward, that whatever the repercussions, whatever our actions are now, I want to see, anticipate what the repercussions are in the future, so that you're not tying yourself down to something that will never work.
How many women are on your council? I could look this up, but how many women?
Now, there's just Nettie and I. But I will say our clerk and CAO are women, and our treasurer. And so I would say our council chamber, when we have council meetings, is quite well balanced out with women to men. So,
Muriel, we have councils in Lambton County that have no women. So congratulations. I mean, you have 2 elected women on your council. You've already surpassed my expectations. I try to look at a future that has at least 1 woman on every council in Lambton County. And you have 2. Congratulations.
Yeah, we're a pretty good stronghold. We work together well, and we do hold those men to be accountable too.
So what do you think is the best thing about being a woman in politics? And conversely, what's the worst thing?
Oh,
maybe
gosh.
nothing. Maybe nothing.
No, I don't know. I just look at it as we are equals. I don't look that one should be overpowering to the other. And I like to look at us as working together as a team. People have to realize a mayor does not have as much power as people think they do have. A mayor is only a facilitator and a spokesperson, and they only have 1 vote, the same as any council member. So the council does hold more power than what a mayor has, really. And a lot of people do not understand that.
I agree, and that's in the Municipal Act, for example. So that is a great mention. Thank you. You're the first person that has in my interviews referred to that, and you're right. So I have one final question that came from one of my women, and I don't know if this is still the case, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. And they asked, how do you deal with men that speak over you when or if that happens? And does it happen to you? I kind of have a feeling it probably doesn't.
Well, yes, it does.
Oh,
and it is a great question. And
good.
The first thing that comes to mind that I use is you stop them and remind them of the process and the protocols and the code of conduct. The code of conduct is probably the most useful tool we have in legislation right now that keeps men on their toes. And yeah, and the thing is, you have to have broad shoulders and be able to take all the ups and downs. Don't have anything discourage you as a woman. A man cannot put you down. You're an equal power, And I always look to everything as majority rules. It doesn't matter what your personal opinions are in government. It's what the majority says. So that's kind of my rule of thumb on that. And you listen to all their concerns and use common sense when addressing everything. And you have to be very diplomatic, and you have to follow the process and the law, and you only deal in facts. Decisions are you make decisions for all the right reasons, but the majority does rule over the minority, and you only deal with the legal facts when making decisions.
That sounds excellent. Actually, I'm going to come back to a couple of the things you've mentioned. Do you have any final words that you would like to leave us with?
Oh gosh. Like I said, you have to be very diplomatic and truthful. And you find, and this is a quote that I found, you find yourself a great big white canvas to paint your journey. And remember, you are the artist of your own life, and don't hand that paintbrush to anyone else.
Muriel, I love that. I just realized that I should have asked you if you had advice for women, and I think that was it. That was wonderful.
Well, I believe in justice and fairness, and you always remember to be truthful and hold your integrity, and use tact and diplomacy in dealing with everything.
So I've had some people sometimes when we have our panel discussions or we have a workshop, people will write me afterwards and they will say, okay, these are the points that I took out of this. And I want to share with you what I heard from you this morning that I really haven't heard from anyone else. And I would like to end with those. One was that you mentioned that the mayor is only a member of council. The responsibility isn't as great as most people think it is. You referenced the code of conduct, which tells me that that's maybe something we should do some training on at some point in the future. And you mentioned that we should always deal with facts. It's so easy to get caught up in the gossip or the myths rather than dealing with exactly what the facts are. So I thank you so much. I mean, it's been an interesting session with you. It's been eye-opening because when I read your bio, as I said, I couldn't believe how involved you've been over the years. And then to learn that you have experience in environmental regulations and you actually took some training, that's pretty impressive. So you are an ideal role model for women who kind of look at it and say, you know what, I'd really like to do that, but I'm not sure I'm the right person. I don't have the training, etc. You just went out, learned what you needed to do, and started. And 24 years, that's a very long and successful career. So I hope you have many more years of helping.
Well, I'm going to have to retire someday.
Not yet. I hope you're doing next term. So I want to thank everyone for listening in today. And if you are interested in learning more, go to thegenecollective.ca. Our workshops are they are all listed there. And you can register for any of the monthly sessions on Eventbrite. The conversation pieces we do a couple of times a month. And Muriel, as I said, thank you once again for joining us today to share your story and provide insight into a life in politics for a woman. To those of you that are watching, thank you. I hope that you are inspired and encouraged to become involved and to create change from within. In the words of someone that I'm a big fan of, in the words of Jacinda Ardern, we can carve our own path, be our own kind of leader. We need to create a new generation of leadership. We can do this together. I encourage you to try. Thank you again.